Nono adjusted the table setting, placing her late mother's napkin ring beside the gold cutlery. It was the first family event she had hosted alone since her wedding. She wanted everything perfect. But as the guests arrived, her sister-in-law, Seba, brushed past her and whispered, "Don't sit next to my husband tonight. You make him stare too much." Nono froze, not because of the insult, but because this wasn't the first time she'd been accused of something she never did. What Seba didn't know, tonight, Nono hadn't planned to sit near anyone. She had reserved a seat for someone who would change the entire game, her divorce lawyer. The family dinner was meant to be a happy night. Seba had just been promoted, and everyone gathered to celebrate. Nono, quiet and respectful, had planned every detail, from the food to the seating. She wanted everything to be perfect. This was her way of showing love, even when she rarely got it in return. As people arrived, laughter filled the room. Nono looked around, proud of what she had done. When it was time to eat, she walked over to sit beside her husband, Duma. It was the most normal thing, a wife sitting with her husband. But just as she reached the chair, Seba stood up with a fake smile and said loud enough for others to hear, "Please move. My husband doesn't feel comfortable with you nearby." The whole table went silent. A few people gasped. Nono stood still for a second, not because of the insult, but because it didn't surprise her. This wasn't the first time Seba tried to embarrass her. What hurt more was that Duma didn't say a word. He just looked away, as if he agreed. But Nono didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply smiled, calm and graceful, picked up her plate, and walked across the room. Everyone's eyes followed her, expecting her to leave in shame, but she didn't leave. She sat down next to a man in a blue suit. He wasn't part of the family, and no one knew him. He looked serious but kind. People whispered, wondering who he was, but Nono didn't care about their whispers. What they didn't know was this. The man in the blue suit wasn't just her guest. He was her lawyer, and tonight wasn't just about dinner. It was the beginning of something bigger, the start of her freedom. While Seba laughed loudly and Duma stayed silent, Nono had already made her move. And this time, she wasn't the quiet one anymore. The man in the blue suit wasn't family. He didn't laugh loudly like the others or try to fit in. He just sat quietly, watching the room with calm eyes and a small, polite smile. His suit was sharp, his tie perfect, and next to his chair was a dark leather briefcase with gold initials. It was the kind of briefcase you only see in courtrooms or important boardrooms. People kept stealing glances at him, wondering who he was, but no one had the courage to ask. Nono didn't explain either. She just sat beside him and softly said, "Thank you for coming." He nodded gently and whispered back, "Whenever you're ready." That was all. His name was Advocate Tumalo Ankub, one of the most respected lawyers in the city. But to Nono, he was more than a lawyer. He was the one person helping her walk out of a marriage that had already ended in silence. The love had died long ago. No more conversations, no more laughter, no more respect. Just cold rooms, forced smiles, and a husband who didn't even see her anymore. Duma had changed. Maybe it was the pressure of work. Maybe it was Seba's influence. Or maybe he just stopped caring. Whatever the reason, Nono had cried enough. She had begged in silence. She had tried to fix things alone, but nothing worked. So one day, she stopped trying to fix it and started preparing to leave it. Tumalo had been her classmate years ago. They weren't close then, but when she saw his name in an online article about women's rights and legal empowerment, she remembered him. She sent an email. He replied. And since then, they had been planning her next chapter, step by step, with care and strength. Tonight, she didn't bring him to make a scene. She brought him to remind herself that she wasn't stuck anymore, that her exit had already begun. She didn't need anyone at that table to defend her, not even her husband, because she had already chosen herself. While the others laughed, gossiped, and acted like everything was perfect, Nono sat beside Tumalo, peaceful and quiet. But inside, she was stronger than ever. She wasn't just attending a dinner, she was closing a chapter. And the man beside her, with the signature briefcase, wasn't just a guest. He was the door to her new beginning. Nono wasn't the kind of woman who ignored signs. She had always been calm and quiet, but she wasn't blind. She had seen the changes in Duma long before anyone else noticed. At first, it was just small things. Missed calls, short replies, forgetting the little details that mattered to her. Then came the endless business trips, the late nights at work, and the constant tiredness whenever she tried to talk to him. He was still in the house, but it felt like she was living with a stranger. The man who once used to check if she ate, who used to laugh at her silly jokes, now barely looked her in the eyes. Conversations turned into cold updates. He would eat silently, scroll through his phone, and leave the room without a word. Sometimes Nono would wait for him in the kitchen just to say goodnight. Most times he didn't notice. But what hurt more than his distance was how he suddenly seemed more alive when Siba was around. Nono saw it. Everyone did. The way Duma laughed at Siba's every joke, the way they whispered at family gatherings, the private glances, even their mother-in-law brushed it off as sibling closeness. But Nono knew better. Her gut told her something was wrong. Still, she didn't make noise. She didn't throw fits or accuse anyone. She just became quiet, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. She was tired of fighting alone, tired of pretending everything was fine. She cooked, cleaned, smiled when needed, and cried silently when no one was looking. But the dinner night changed something deep inside her. When Siba humiliated her in front of everyone, Nono waited for Duma to say something. Just one word, just one look to show he still cared. But he sat still. He didn't even flinch. He let it happen, like she didn't matter at all. That was the real betrayal. Not the laughter, not the distance, but his silence. It was in that moment she realized she wasn't just unloved. She had become invisible in her own marriage, in her own home. She had been shrinking herself for so long that no one saw her anymore. Not even the man who once promised to protect her heart. That night, she stopped hoping for change. She stopped begging with her silence. And though she didn't say a word, her heart made a decision. She would no longer live like a ghost in her own life. She didn't need anyone to choose her. She would choose herself. A week before the dinner, Nono had been cleaning the house as usual. Duma had left his laptop on the couch, still open. She picked it up to place it on the table, but the screen lit up. The last window he had used was still open. It was his email. Nono didn't mean to snoop. She wasn't that kind of woman. But something stopped her. Right there on the screen was a draft, not yet sent, but fully written. The subject line made her heart drop. To Siba, I wish things were simpler. Her fingers froze. For a moment, she hoped it was just business, maybe something innocent. But as she read the first few lines, her breath caught. Duma had written about feelings, about moments that shouldn't have happened, but felt so real. He didn't say much, but what he didn't say was even louder. The way he called her easy to talk to and said he couldn't be himself at home anymore. It was clear. There was more between him and Siba than anyone was admitting. Nono sat down slowly. She read the email twice, then 3 times. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stared at the words, feeling her body go cold. This was the moment she had feared, yet somehow already knew was coming. She clicked print. The paper came out quietly from the home printer. She folded it carefully and placed it in her purse. That night, while Duma slept peacefully beside her like nothing was wrong, Nono stared at the ceiling. Her heart wasn't angry. It was tired. The next morning, she didn't shout or accuse. She didn't tell anyone. She just searched for a number, Tumalo Enkay, her old classmate from university. He had always been smart, always calm. She had read about him recently in a newspaper, helping women who were going through tough divorces. She found his number and sent a message. He replied in minutes. Whenever you're ready. When they met, she told him everything, not with rage, but with quiet strength. Tumalo listened carefully, never judging, only nodding. Nono said she didn't want to ruin anyone. She didn't even want to fight for love that was already dead. She just wanted peace, a clean exit, her dignity back. Tumalo understood. He told her the steps. He helped her start the process, and he promised to be by her side through it all. That email was the final crack in her already broken heart. But instead of using it to destroy others, she used it to rebuild herself. She didn't want to win the marriage anymore. She just wanted to win her freedom. The morning after the dinner, Nono woke up early. Not because she had slept well. She hadn't. Her mind was full, but her heart was calm. She had reached the point where the truth no longer hurt. It simply confirmed what she already knew. As she walked into the kitchen to make tea, her mother-in-law entered with a frown on her face. Without a greeting, the older woman said, Siba was just protecting her marriage. Why are you being dramatic? Nono didn't flinch. She didn't argue. She had learned that speaking didn't always bring understanding, especially when the person had already picked a side. And in this family, that side was never hers. Instead, Nono walked over to the dining table and picked up a brown folder she had prepared the night before. She handed it gently to her mother-in-law and said nothing, just a soft nod. The woman looked confused, but opened the folder anyway. Inside was a timeline, clear dates, showing when Duma had told Nono he was out of town for work, and when Siba had said she was visiting a friend. The timelines matched, but not in the way they had claimed. There were screenshots of hotel bookings under different names, but the same contact number, Duma's. There were text messages between the two, short but sweet, with words no brother-in-law should send to his wife's sister. And then, the photo, taken by someone Nono had quietly asked for help. It showed Duma and Siba at a beach resort, laughing, holding hands, sunglasses on, looking like a couple, not family. Her mother-in-law stared at the photo for a long time. The colour drained from her face. She opened her mouth but said nothing. For the first time she looked unsure. But Nono didn't wait for a response. She had already said everything that needed to be said, without words. She turned, picked up her tea, and walked away. For years she had been told to keep the family together, to ignore small issues, to not embarrass the name. But this wasn't a small issue. It wasn't just a mistake. It was betrayal, deep and ugly. And the fact that her own family had asked her to be silent, to stay in her place, made it worse. Nono had always respected her in-laws, tried her best to fit in, to love them as her own. But that day, she saw the truth. Loyalty in that house was never about love. It was about control, about choosing silence to protect those who did wrong. But not anymore. Nono didn't raise her voice. She raised the truth. At the next family gathering, Nono walked into the room with a quiet strength that no one had seen before. The table was set as usual, and family members chatted and laughed, trying to maintain the illusion of unity. But Nono had something special planned. A small envelope, carefully sealed, and meant for everyone to see, but not open just yet. Without any fanfare, she placed the envelope right at the center of the table, as if it were a silent message that needed no explanation. The room grew still for a brief moment. No one said a word. Nono didn't cry or shout. She simply held her glass up and made a toast. In a calm, clear voice that carried the weight of all her hidden sorrows and hard-won courage, she said, "To growth, the kind that comes after betrayal." Her words hung in the air like a promise of change. Every ear in the room listened, and every heart felt the truth behind her simple statement. Siba, who had always been quick to throw insults and stir trouble, hesitated. The envelope was meant for her, and in that instant, Siba reached for it, her hand trembling as if she knew that the envelope held more than just paper. It held the proof of secrets and a turning point in the family's story. But before she could open it, Nono stood up. She did not wait for any more reactions or explanations. With a graceful yet firm movement, she gathered her strength, and her lawyer, who had been sitting quietly beside her, stood and followed closely behind. In that moment, the room filled with a mix of shock and silence. All eyes were glued to Nono as she left the gathering with quiet dignity. Each step she took was a declaration that she would no longer be a victim of whispered accusations or hidden lies. The envelope on the table served as a silent witness to a chapter of pain that was finally being closed. Even without speaking further, Nono's actions screamed louder than any angry words or tearful confessions could. The toast, though simple, was powerful enough to echo in every corner of the room. It was as if she was saying that out of all the hurt and betrayal, she had learned something invaluable, that growth comes when you have the courage to break free from a chain of lies and deceit. With every step away from that table, Nono was choosing herself, her worth, and her future over the stifling traditions that had once kept her silent. Her lawyer's presence was a reminder that she was not taking this step alone. Together, they were an unspoken promise of new beginnings, a beacon for anyone who had ever felt trapped by what others said or did behind closed doors. The broken silence of that day was a turning point, one that would ripple far beyond the walls of that gathering. Nono's goodbye letter, left unseen but full of truth, was a bold statement of independence. It wasn't just a note of farewell to a painful past. It was a declaration that she would no longer let anyone define who she was or how she should live. And in that moment, with just a sealed envelope and a well-chosen toast, everyone in that room understood that the winds of change had finally begun to blow. Nono had spent years turning that house into a home, She picked out the curtains, chose the paint colors, bought the furniture, and even planted flowers in the garden. Every room had her touch. Every corner held a memory. She had cooked countless meals there, hosted family events, and made that place feel warm and welcoming. But deep down, there was always one thing that made her uneasy. Her name was not on the house papers. She had paid half the mortgage. Every month, without fail, she sent her part. She had believed that love didn't need signatures, that trust was enough. But now looking back, she saw how blind that belief had been. Duma had bought the house before their marriage, and though she had contributed from the start, he never added her name to the deed, and he never offered. When she once brought it up, he smiled and said, "You're my wife. What's mine is yours." She had smiled back, thinking it meant something. Now she knew better. When the divorce process began, the house became a big topic. Duma wanted to keep it. He argued that it was his before the marriage and that Nono had no legal claim. But Tumelo, her lawyer, didn't back down. He studied every payment, every transfer, every bill Nono had helped with. He found a loophole, a detail most people would have missed. Nono had unknowingly become a co-owner through consistent financial support and renovations that added value to the property. They went to court. Duma tried to fight it. He tried to paint Nono as ungrateful, saying she was just trying to take what wasn't hers. But the evidence spoke louder. Tumelo presented the facts calmly, showing the judge how Nono had contributed equally, not just with money, but with effort, time, and care. It wasn't just a house, it was her home too. The court agreed. Duma was given 30 days to move out. Nono stayed. The day he left, she stood at the doorway and watched as the man who once called her his everything packed his things and walked away without a word. She didn't cry. She didn't feel angry. She just felt free. That night, she lit a candle in the living room and sat in silence. For the first time in a long time, the house felt peaceful. It had always looked beautiful, but now it truly felt like hers. Not because a court said so, but because she had earned it. Brick by brick, meal by meal, memory by memory, she had built that home with love. Now, without lies or pain inside it, the house finally felt warm. 3 months after Duma walked out of the house, Nono's phone buzzed with a message from him. She stared at his name on the screen for a moment before opening it. It was a short message. No hello, no how are you, just a link and a line. I thought you should see this. Curious, she clicked. It was a video, a public one, already spreading fast online. Duma was sitting alone in front of a camera, looking tired, almost regretful. In the video, he spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. He admitted that he had made mistakes, that he let emotions confuse him, that he had hurt someone who only ever tried to love and support him. I was misled by emotions, he said, and I didn't realize how much damage I caused until it was too late. The comments below the video were filled with mixed reactions. Some praised him for being honest. Others criticized him for taking too long to speak up. But Nono didn't type a single word. She didn't share the video, didn't reply to the message, and didn't tell anyone about it. She didn't need to. Instead, she opened her photo gallery and selected a picture she had taken just a few days before. It was of her standing in front of a modern, tall apartment building. It was hers, fully paid for, with her name on every paper. A place she had bought on her own, from her own strength. No joint accounts, no borrowed help, just her and her journey. She posted the picture with a caption that said everything she needed to say, built from tears, rented with peace. In just minutes, the post began to gain attention. People were moved by her quiet power, by her ability to turn pain into purpose. She didn't need to defend herself. Her life was the answer. Her growth was the message. Duma had waited too long to apologize. By the time he finally spoke up, Nono had already moved on. She had already healed, already rebuilt. His words couldn't touch her anymore. Not because she hated him, but because she no longer needed his apology to feel whole. She had learned something important. Some closures don't come from people. They come from peace, from choosing yourself, from waking up one day and realizing that you deserve better, and then going out to find it. And that's exactly what Nono had done. After everything she had been through, Nono didn't disappear. She didn't hide in shame or let the pain swallow her. Instead, she decided to speak. At first, it was just writing. She started a small blog, quietly, under a simple name. She wrote about her experience, not to blame, but to help. She shared how it felt to be ignored, how hard it was to walk away, and how she slowly learned to stand again. Her words were honest and raw. She didn't try to sound perfect. She just told the truth about betrayal, silence, and how women are often told to keep quiet to protect others. The blog started with only a few readers, but within weeks, it spread like fire. Women from everywhere found comfort in her posts. Some shared their stories, some cried in her comments section, and many said, "I feel seen." Nono never expected it to grow the way it did, but her inbox started filling with messages. People wanted to hear more. Then one day, she received an invitation to speak at a women's conference. The topic was healing after betrayal. At first, she hesitated, but then she remembered how she once sat in silence, hoping someone would understand her pain. She didn't want other women to feel that way. She agreed. Standing on that stage was both scary and powerful. She looked out at the crowd and saw faces just like hers, tired, hopeful, broken, healing. She spoke about how betrayal hurts, not just from a partner, but from the family that tells you to keep the peace while your heart breaks. She spoke about the strength it takes to walk away, and how money, independence, and self-worth are not things women should ever apologize for. That one talk led to many more. Soon, she was being asked to speak at universities, women's groups, and even law panels. Her blog became a full website. Her words turned into a book. And then, one day, she was handed an award for her work, Voice of Strength, Women's Advocate of the Year. As she stood on the stage to accept it, Nono looked out at the crowd and smiled. She remembered how she was once told to stay quiet so she wouldn't ruin the family name. But now, her voice was changing lives. Her pain had become a platform. Her silence had turned into strength. She didn't just survive divorce. She used it to build a new path, not just for herself, but for thousands of other women who needed to know they weren't alone. Months had passed since Nono's name became known in rooms that once didn't know she existed. Her events were now filled with women eager to listen, to learn, and to heal. She had grown into her voice, into her purpose. What started as heartbreak had turned into something much bigger, a movement. At one of her biggest speaking events yet, Nono stood on stage in a flowing dress, her face calm, her presence powerful. The hall was full. Applause followed her words. But outside, beyond the glass doors, someone stood quietly. It was Seba. She looked different. Not the confident, flashy woman who once whispered cruel things across the dinner table. Her eyes were tired, her frame smaller, her smile forced, alone. She didn't try to walk in. She didn't demand attention. She just waited. When Nono finally stepped outside, Seba took a small step forward. "Can I talk to you?" she asked softly. There was a time when Nono would have frozen at that voice, unsure of what to say or do. But that time was gone. Nono didn't flinch. She simply looked at her with grace and said, "I forgive you, but I don't entertain you." There was no hate in her voice, just truth, the kind that came from deep healing. Seba blinked, as if she wasn't expecting kindness. But she didn't argue. She nodded slowly, looked down, and walked away into the night. Later that evening, during a Q&A at the event, someone in the audience asked, "How did you move on so gracefully, after everything?" Nono smiled gently. She paused, then said something that stayed with everyone in the room. "When someone pushes you away from a table, it's because they know you're capable of building a kingdom." And that's exactly what she had done. She didn't fight to be accepted anymore. She didn't beg to be seen or loved or respected. She created her own space, a place where she was valued, where her story mattered, where other women could grow beside her. Nono didn't just leave the table. She built her own, stronger, bigger, and open to those who chose peace over pride. To every woman told to shrink, step aside, or stay quiet, pull out your own chair, serve your worth, and make sure it's a full-course feast. Please like, share, and subscribe for more African tales.